You are now listening to Renewed Mind Revolution podcast with your host, Michelle Cook Hall. Please begin to take that good deep breath as we begin to refresh, recharge, and reset. Let's go. Welcome to Renewed Mind Revolution podcast with your host, Michelle Cook Hall. As always, it is my honor and my pleasure to be able to share some tips and some tools with you that I know will assist you in becoming a better you. That's what it's all about. That's why we do this. That's why I'm here, is to remind you that regardless of your situation, regardless of how many mistakes you made, regardless of where you find yourself at right now in life, and regardless of your age, let me throw that in there, you can always, and I mean always, start all over again. Click that reset button and start all over again. Why do I do this? Why do I even push and and broadcast this theory, this perspective, this understanding? I do this because I have watched so many people give up on life, and it's heartbreaking. I have seen people who have succumbed to their illness, their addictions, their afflictions, their pain, and their hurt, and give up and check out on life. I've seen it. And because I've seen it so many times, because I've seen it be put to practice so many times, I make sure that I come and remind you on a daily basis, because reminding you is also reminding myself. Encouraging you is also encouraging myself that you and I can make it, that you and I can take it, because if God has called us to it, He has equipped us for it, we can handle it. Hear me say that again, loud and proud. If God has called us to it, He has equipped us for it, we can handle it. So I am so grateful. I'm so glad to be able to take this day and come on and share something with you. I mean, something that I believe that you can go back and reflect on and say, that's helpful. That's good. That I can use. All of my information that I share on here in some form or the other can be found in Faith versus Fear, Breaking Family Ties, and both of those books are available on Amazon.com as well as Barnes and Noble. Now, today, I will not be before you long. I will not keep you all day. I try to keep my podcast episodes at a certain time frame, because I believe that it's only so much information any of us can take at one time before we begin to just like push it all out. So I want to grab your attention, hold you there, and then let you go, right? So that you are armed and you're ready, and you heading out to face your day. So what can we talk about today? What is our topic for today? So I was thinking about what I was dealing with these past couple of days, and I've shared this topic before, and I felt that it would be very helpful, especially now, to others, if I share this topic again. We're going to, of course, put a twist on. We're going to, of course, change it up. But we're going to hit this topic again, and we're going to talk about feelings. Feelings. Caught up in my feelings. Caught up in my feelings. Come on. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about you, me, we getting caught up in our feelings. And it is so easy. It is so easy to get triggered and get caught up in your feelings. It could be something so small, something that you thought you overcame, something you thought that you outgrown, and that it no longer had a pull on you, it no longer had your attention. But it comes up and you find yourself caught up in your feelings. And what I shared about feelings many months ago, I'm pretty sure a year ago or so, what I shared about feelings is they're not reliable. And what I mean by that is that we can get caught up in our feelings, which is caught up in our emotions, and we can become what is called emotional, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. So we're not talking about having positive feelings or emotions, but we're talking about being caught up in our feelings and allowing our feelings to rule and to regulate how we behave, the choices that we make, and what we do. Everything that I share is always going back to something that is kind of driving you into areas that you don't want to be, areas that you don't want to go. So we talk about depression, we talk about anxiety, we talk about fear a lot here, because these are different emotions and different issues that kind of takes a driver's seat and navigate you into areas that you don't want to be. So what else better can we talk about besides feelings that definitely will get in the driver's seat and begin to navigate where you don't want to go? So that's what we're talking about today, getting caught up in our feelings, and the fact that feelings can be very unreliable and unpredictable. Unpredictable, can I say that? And I'm saying unpredictable because, once again, you could have made up in your mind, this is not going to bother me anymore. Let's use an individual. Come on, let's do that today. This is a person who, you've had a very difficult time with when it comes to communications. You guys just see things totally different, and although you try to be respectful, and nice and courteous, it's just not a person that you can see yourself sitting down with and breaking bread, right? So you try to just be courteous and go on with your life. You have made up in your mind, right, that no matter what they do, no matter what they say, you're not going to allow them to get you riled up and get you to behave in a way that later on you might feel bad about, because it's nothing worse than allowing someone to invade your space and bring in negativity, right? And then you become negative. That's a terrible, terrible feeling. So let's continue to talk, because this is something that I have had experience with in regards to making up my mind. This is how I'm going to respond, and fail, epic fail. Okay, so let's talk about this. So you make up in your mind that you're not going to respond to anything that they do that might put you in a negative headspace. You're not going to do it. You coached yourself. Even if you went to the mirror and say, listen here, this is what we're going to do, you've made up in your mind you're not going to allow this to happen. Not today. Not today. And you work very hard to protect your peace, right? Because that's what people are saying a lot to these days. So protect your peace, protect your space, right? Try to keep off negative energy. Those things are just so important, and you're hearing people talk about that more and more and more. Self health and healing and protecting your space, and self care, right? And doing what's best for yourself. Sometimes it's hard to do, depending on your personality, but protect your space, protect yourself, and all this, right? So you tell yourself, look, no matter what they do, no matter what happens, I'm going to practice self care, okay? And I'm not going to allow myself to behave in a manner that will, make me look bad, feel bad later on. You coach yourself, you're ready, you think you're prepared, you think that you're mentally and physically ready for the encounter, and then the incident happened where you find yourself um, going head to head. I mean, just completely epically falling and failing at what you've coached yourself to not do. Like, it's an epic fail. You've actually responded in a way that you're not pleased with, you're not happy with, and it drains you. It drains you. Like, you became the person that you tried your best not to become in this conversation, in this incident, right? And then what does that do to you? It makes you feel drained. It makes you feel frustrated. And it makes you feel uh, like a loss of strength, because when you have convinced yourself, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to behave this way. I don't want to act this way. I really want to maintain my, my composure. Then there's always this person, this one person, two people, whoever in your life that know what buttons to push. They know, and they go after it, right? And you find yourself that everything that you said, everything that you coach yourself into not doing, you do, and it makes you feel defeated and deflated, right? So this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. All of us have moments at some point or another where we fail in this area. And it could be, a coworker, it can be an employee, it could be an environment, an environment that just brings out the worst. You don't like going to grocery stores. It's too hectic. You don't like going into malls. You don't like going to the doctor's office. It brings out the worst in you, because you're sick of hearing the bad and negative news. I mean, and then you get caught in your feelings before you even get there. Your blood pressure is up, your heart rate is up because you are emotional and you frustrated and you caught up in your what, in your feelings, right? So we're gonna talk today about how can we manage our feelings. How can we assure that we're not allowing our feelings to take a driver's seat in our lives and take us to a place that we don't want to go. This is so good, you guys. Take us to a place that we don't want to go, because see, as I'm saying this, I can kind of like almost visually see, how feelings can take you, to a place that you don't want to be. you know um it's so funny because sometimes you can hear people say they made me go there. Right, they made me go there. They responded in a way that they shouldn't have responded, but they blame it on the other person, said they make me go there. But what we should be saying is that our feelings took us there. Our emotions took us there. Our responses, our reactions took us there. And so, sometimes it can become more detrimental than what I'm saying. Sometimes our feelings can really get us into tight spots. They can really get us into situations that we do not need to be. And that's what we want to work on. That's what we want to work on. We want to make sure it's not just maintaining your integrity, it's just not maintaining your composure, but it's making sure that we're just now not allowing our feelings to guide us into situations and circumstances that we should never be in, that can cause real consequences. And it can happen. People say, I don't know what happened, something just came over me, I got so frustrated, I got so angry, I got so mad, right? And these are real scenarios. These are real conversations that people have, saying, one minute we were talking and they said something I didn't like, and then next thing I know, I just didn't know that that can happen. And that's what happens when we, can get caught up in our feelings. We allow our feelings to take us to a place that we don't want to be and that we don't need to be. And not only that, but it's exhausting. It's draining. It is so draining to allow your negative feelings to, have you behaving in a way that, takes all of your strength. I don't know about you, but I know for me, being frustrated, being agitated, it takes a lot out of me. Being happy and maintaining my peace is not as stressful, it's not as draining, it's not as overwhelming as me having to, or let me not say having to or have to, but not as much as me deciding to react and respond in a way that is emotional and stressful. So, for example, let me just be transparent and say that there has definitely been moments in my life where I have coached myself and say, hey, something happened, right? And I want to address it, and I coach myself and say, no matter what happens, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna behave. This is how I'm gonna respond. I'm not gonna allow myself to go there. I'm not going to allow myself to go there. And I say that because, once again, I am aware that my feelings can take me somewhere I don't want to go, right? Now, truthfully, with lack of experience when I was much younger, that speech went right out the door. Matter of fact, I didn't even give myself that speech. I would go right in with my feelings, say what I need to say, feel justified, you know, and move on with my life. But with age and experience came wisdom. Understand that that was exhausting and it was draining. And, you can't get things done when you're caught up in your feelings. You can't be heard when you're caught up in your feelings. That's just truth. That is just true. People will shut you down, even when you're dealing with business. I've seen people, when they're conducting themselves in business, become very irate, and they think that's going to get them what they need, but it's the total opposite. I shut down. People shut down and no longer want to hear you when you are irate and when you're yelling and when you're screaming and when you caught up in your feelings. But you maintaining yourself, showing self-control, and speaking your truth, and getting the opportunity to share your story or your experience, in a calm manner, it makes a world of a difference. And this is just experience. This is experience. Um, and as I was saying, there have been moments that I have had to put that to practice more than once, on a professional level as well as a personal level. I've had to put this into practice. Tell myself, hey, this is, because some conversations are more triggered than others. So there was a lot of times in a professional manner, it wasn't as hard to put that into place because this is the place of my business. This is the place that I'm conducting business. But when it came to personal, it was a lot more challenging. Let's be honest. It was a lot more challenging for me to put that up and say, I am not, going to allow myself to go there, right? And then there was moments, I failed, epically failed, no matter what I said to myself. And I would tell myself later on, like, oh my God, you completely failed that. Like coming out the gate, boop, I failed. Because it just takes like that one thing to be said for me to completely forget that I'm supposed to be, monitoring and watching what I say and watching how I respond. We seem to get in this headspace of thinking that we are not in control of our feelings, but we are in control of our feelings. We really can determine how we will respond. It's just that sometimes we have put into practice, because we know from this podcast that what will be practiced we're going to perfect. So we have put into practice to just go by our feelings and just respond in our feelings and just say how we feel, and just that's what we do, just and sometimes our society births that too, because our society kind of tells us that you're showing weakness if you don't respond a certain way. And that's the total opposite. It shows strength to practice restraint. Can I say that again? It takes strength to practice restraint. And I remember an incident that it was racism in my face. It was something that someone said that was racist, and it was a professional setting, and they said it to me. And this is me, just kind of keeping that protected covering over myself, and always trying to think before I respond. That's a big thing for me, is to think before you respond. And so I remember when it happened, immediately what I did was remove myself from that moment, and took care of the incident without me uh, becoming emotional, without me becoming caught up in my feelings. And that was way more effective than me going tit for tat, going back and forth with this person. Because once again, this was in my professional setting. So you have to be really, really careful, because sometimes these could come at you so quick and you're not ready or prepared for it. But I always feel like if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Come on. I like that. I like when people say that. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So you just kind of have to put into practice, and that's how you stay ready. You put this into practice. You work on this. This is something that you do for yourself. This is something that you do for yourself. And don't think that, you have to, kind of fish for something to come about, because it's going to happen every day. Every day. We are challenged in one way or the other on a way to try to practice this restraint, this emotional restraint, this feelings restraints. We at some point, throughout our day. Something can be said, something can be done, towards us that immediately we want to respond with our feelings. But understanding that responding with your feelings, you know, it's not, number one, it's not going to be effective. It's not, hear me again, it's not effective. I know it makes you seem really tough in your head. You seem really tough because we have this assumption that the louder person is the stronger person. It might make you seem really tough. Um, and even if it makes you emotionally, you know, sad, where you become, just crying, that's draining. So these things, these feelings that drives us, we have to be very mindful of it. I remember, being in a room with someone who was bringing up their childhood, and this person was at the time maybe in their 50s, and they were talking and talking about the childhood and began to just cry, about things that happened to them from their childhood. And they were so emotional about it, and very sad about it, and everything. And they were very angry about it. You can see it. You can see it. We know that certain things and certain situations in our lives can take us right back to that place. And I witnessed that. I witnessed that with their feelings. I witnessed that with their emotions, that they went right back there. And that's a lot of power. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's a lot of power, that you are now adults, and we're talking mid 50s, early 60s, adult, and you are still at a point, you know, because obviously there's no healing in this area. You still at a point in your life that when you talk about your childhood, um, that that child comes right back. That child begins to be the one that's talking. And I know about that getting to the root. I did a podcast on that before. Getting to the root of your problem, getting to the core. A lot of times people want to ignore that. They want to ignore getting to the core of their problem, and they don't understand, or they are just in denial about how important that is. Because you can surface all you want, just keep surface, but if you don't get to the core, if I feel like I'm afraid of being closed in spaces, right? I know this. I'm just saying, constantly. I know that I'm claustrophobic, right? And I have this extreme fear of being closed in spaces, right? And for I'm 50, 60 years old, and I'm still to the point where I would cry, I would shake, I would do all this stuff, right? These are all these feelings that have been driving me. Like, all these emotions been driving my life for 60 years, keeping me from doing things, going places, and being, happy. Okay. I am doing myself no justice if I do not put in time, put in the work to find out why. Why am I so afraid? Why? Do you rather continue to live your life where you are missing moments and missing, experiences? Would you rather live a life that you're missing wonderful and, experiences because of this challenge? Or would you rather face this challenge and see what is it that has put me here? And so a lot of times we have to do that. A lot of people who struggle with anger are very volatile individuals, and just think it's just a personality. It's not. It's not. That emotion, that feeling that you're having of getting ready to pop your top off every time someone disagrees with you, or you get into confrontation. It's just not from just your personality. No, it's way more deeper than that. There is something that is going on that you need to do what? Get to the roots of. Get to the root of. So what we're understanding is that in order for me to even attempt to manage some of my feelings, some of my emotions, right? And keep them from driving us into places and territories that we shouldn't be in. We need to do first what? We need to get to the core, the root of whatever it is that causes us to respond or behave in this way. Because everybody don't do that. Everybody don't respond the way you do. Everybody don't respond the way that I do. So when I realized that, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more anxious than other people. Maybe I'm a little bit more easily irritated or agitated, and it's just not because of a physical, circumstance, situation. Not just because I have a headache or I don't feel good today. No, 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 no. There is something going on. It's just not because I'm tired today and I didn't get sleep last night. No, 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 no. There is something else going on. And when I realized that it's my responsibility, and I always say this to you, it is your responsibility to begin to do the work and begin to seek the help so that you can determine and find out, why am I responding this way? Why is that my default setting? I'm going back and I'm hitting all these other podcast episodes, and I hope you guys go back and listen to it, because I am purposely making sure that I am hitting the titles of these other podcasts, because this is what it all is, like a full circle, right? It's a full circle, and I'm enjoying doing that today. So you need to go back and see, why is this my default setting? Why am I always responding in this way? Why is this exactly what I do? Why am I so angry? Why am I so frustrated? Why am I so mad? Why am I so sad about this? Why does this bring me to tears? Why, when you bring up a conversation or a certain topic, or if I go to a certain place, why am I so mad? Why am I so afraid? Why am I so sad? What is it about this that caused me to be this, or to respond in this way? So that's when you have to do the work. That's when you have to, practice what they call self-care, and begin to get to the root of the issue, so that you can begin your healing process. That's what it's all about, getting to your healing process. What I want you to get out of this podcast today is that, some of the behavior that we label as like, oh, that's just normal, that's just your personality. It's not. It's not our personality. It's not normal to always respond with anger, always respond with being frustrated, always respond with being irritated, always respond with being combative, or wanting to break down and just cry. These are not, just natural, responses or default settings that we should have for normal, issues and normal things that come about. So, of course, if something tragic happens to us, of course, we're going to show the emotion of being sad, right? We're going to show the emotion of being sad. But there are other, moments that don't warrant you to feel sad. You at a party, you had a celebration, and you're supposed to be celebrating somebody's promotion or somebody's birth of their child. Right? And you're not crying because you're just so happy for them, but you're crying in a sadness. Why is it that this celebration would make you so sad? Then people will be like, why did she even come? Why did he even come? And he's gonna just be emotional and sit over to sad and be sad. What's wrong with them? This is not natural. So we're talking about natural responses, things that make it makes sense, right? We know that if you're celebrating, I'm gonna be happy for you. And if I'm crying at a wedding, it's tears of joy. Tears of, I'm so happy to see love. That two people found each other, they love one another. So tears is acceptable in a setting such as that, right? And you lost someone, and I'm there supporting you. I might cry with you, because that's the type of person I am. I have done it many times, because I hate to see people in pain. I hate to see people hurt, right? So in that setting, you will see tears, and that's a normal setting. But there are settings that, people are sad, and they shouldn't be sad. But because they have experienced something, in the past, that they have not uncovered, they're dealing with some rooted issues that they are not addressing. And so we want to make sure that, we are addressing our issues. We want to make sure that we're unrooting, and bringing it out, because I believe in exposing, our truth, exposing it, and it takes away its power. Talk about this all the time, you guys. Go back and listen to the podcast. Catch up, because we talk about this so much. And I'm so grateful for you guys who have been riding with me. Next month, I have a really special podcast coming up. I have a special guest. I promise you guys, the beginning of this year, I was going to have a special guest. And I do have one coming for next month. I don't even want to share details yet because I'm super excited. It's something that I'm very interested in, and I know you will be too. We're doing really good, you guys. We're really doing good with this podcast. So I'm so excited to continue to do it, and I could not have done it without you. And I remember the end of last year, just sending you guys a thank you podcast. Thank you. And I want to say that today. I didn't put together just one podcast to say thank you, but I do want to say today thank you for your love, thank you for your support, thank you for clicking that button and listening, and sharing it. Just thank you so very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the love, and I appreciate the support. This is why I do what I do, because I know it's helping somebody. And so for that, I will continue to do it with all of my strength and all of my might as God gives me grace to do so. So today, I am summing up this wonderful, wonderful podcast and telling you to not get caught up in your feelings, as I will not get caught up in mine. We're going to do this together, ladies and gentlemen, because we can. God has equipped us to it. He has called us to it. Therefore, we can handle it. You and I love you, but most importantly, God loves you more. Have an outstanding day. You have been listening to Renewed Mind Revolution podcast with your host, Michelle Cook Hall. God bless.